The second chapter of the Book of Boba Fett gave us our first live-action look at Black Krrsantan, the imposing, black-haired Wookiee bounty hunter employed by the two Hutt twins. This will be many Star Wars fans' first time meeting the character, but he's been part of the universe since 2015 when he was introduced in Kieran Gillen's run of the Darth Vader comics, and he's gone on to appear in both Dr. Aphra series, the main Star Wars run, and Bounty Hunters. He is prominent in the comics, but now that he's in a live-action series, let me run through his story so far to make sure nobody is left in the dark. We don't know how old Black Krrsantan is, but we do know that he was forced to leave Kashyyyk by his own people. I'm speculating, but it wouldn't surprise me to hear that he had earned the title of Mad Claw, which was given to any Wookiee who chose to use their claws in combat. It was a title of dishonor, and at least in Legends, it also came along with exile. To leave Kashyyyk, Black Krrsantan injured another Wookiee and left him bleeding out as bait for Trandoshan slavers. He killed all but one of them and demanded to be taken to gladiatorial crime bosses known as the Zonti brothers. Krrsantan volunteered to enter their fighting pits simply to become a better killer. He and his group of trainees were whittled down by fighting each other until he was chosen for a special procedure. The Zonti brothers cybernetically enhanced Krrsantan by installing metal plates over all the bones in his hands, and they performed it while he was still awake. The procedure made him an even more efficient killer, and he was sold into the gladiatorial pits where he gained notoriety. Although he did volunteer, he vowed to one day find the Zonti brothers again to put him through the same pain they had inflicted on him. Eventually, Krrsantan freed himself of the fighting pits and became a bounty hunter working for Jabba the Hutt. When Luke Skywalker was 9 years old, Jabba instituted a so-called water tax, sending his thugs to various moisture farmers and settlers to steal their water. But when they reached the Lars homestead, they were driven off by Ben Kenobi. Jabba sent Black Krrsantan to send a message to the man that opposed his rule. The Wookiee mistakenly captured Owen Lars, but was quickly confronted by Kenobi. The two battled, and Krrsantan was defeated, although it was a fairly even match. The bounty hunter earned a new scar over his eye, as well as the wrath of his employer, so he fled Tatooine for a time. But over a decade later, Black Krrsantan was back on Jabba's good side and was considered to be one of his best bounty hunters alongside Boba Fett. Darth Vader hired them both for separate missions. Fett was sent to track down and capture the young pilot who had recently destroyed the Death Star. Krrsantan was hired to find a mole hidden within Darth Vader's ranks. He successfully uncovered a plot against the Sith Lord, a plot sanctioned by the Emperor himself. But that was none of Krrsantan's business, so he left. He briefly returned to the fighting pits for a bit of fun until he was hired by one of Darth Vader's associates, a rogue archaeologist named Dr. Aphra. She assembled a team of several bounty hunters to steal a fortune from an Imperial ship while it was in transport. He and Aphra allowed most of the credits to be vented into space, where the other bounty hunters thought they were lost forever. But that was all part of Aphra's plan, and she had means of collecting the lost credits to be delivered to Darth Vader. Krrsantan did that job in exchange for Aphra's assistance in tracking down the Zonti brothers and the promise of more credits in the future. And so began his partnership with Aphra, whose fate remained entangled with Vader's. When the Sith Lord's TIE fighter was shot down by rebels on the planet Vrogus Vas, Aphra and Krrsantan traveled there to help. There he came to blows with the mighty Wookiee Chewbacca. Krrsantan won the fight, but was eventually overwhelmed by the rest of the rebels and left unconscious on the planet while Aphra was captured. Vader put a bounty out for her return, and Black Krrsantan obliged, recovering the archaeologist from the rebels and delivering her to the Executor. Believing she knew too much, the Sith Lord threw her out the airlock. But Krrsantan quickly retrieved her body from space and revived her because she still owed him credits and her help in finding the Zonti brothers. So he joined her on a quest for fortune and glory to find an ancient city of Force sensitives called the Ordu Aspectu, a splinter group of the Jedi led by a man named Rr. When they found their fortress, it had long been abandoned, but Aphra obtained a crystal that held Rr's consciousness, or at least a copy of it inside. But it had to be activated through the Force before it could be considered valuable. They sought out Luke Skywalker, and when he was unable to activate it, they captured him and presented him to the Queen of the Screaming Citadel, a mysterious, supposedly Force-sensitive woman who wound up being controlled by a parasitic hive mind. They traded Luke for her help activating the crystal, and she did, but she also betrayed them and used her parasites to infect Black Krrsantan. The infected Wookiee was too strong to contain and wound up decimating the Queen's parasitic army. With the Queen's death, Krrsantan was freed from any infestation, and he left with Aphra. Their plan was to auction off the ancient crystal on the black market, and the Zonti brothers were invited to the event. The auction itself fell under Imperial attack, but Krrsantan captured the Zonti brothers and fled, preparing to exact his revenge. After that, and after the events of The Empire Strikes Back, he found himself back in the company of Dr. Aphra. He joined her on a mission to find mystical rings from a lost city. They found the rings, but were betrayed by a member of their team who handed them over to Ronan Tag, a relative of General Tag from A New Hope. Aphra wound up destroying the Tag penthouse so she and Krrsantan could escape. While attempting to lie low, they ran afoul of the bounty hunter Bosk in a cantina. The Trandoshan and the Wookiee came to blows, but Aphra was able to convince them not to kill each other. Maybe that was the last straw, because the Wookiee seemingly had enough of the Doctor after that and took up a bounty on her set by the Tag family. She escaped, and Black Krrsantan once again began working alone. 5 or 6 years later, he was seen on Tatooine under the employment of 2 Hutts, cousins of Jabba the Hutt, simply known as the Twins. So now we're all caught up to the Book of Boba Fett. I don't think you're gonna need to know anything I just talked about, but now you do, just in case. I think it's useful to know that Black Krrsantan and Boba Fett have some history together. At least they know each other and were considered Jabba the Hutt's 2 best bounty hunters. I think it's good to have the context that Black Krrsantan has a long history with the Hutts and Tatooine as well. And of course, it's good to know his personality as a big, angry Wookiee. Not that you need his backstory to get that, they weren't exactly subtle with his design. As far as live-action storytelling goes, we have never seen a Wookiee like this. This isn't Chewbacca or Tarful or Sagwa, no one friendly. It's interesting to think that we've seen Wookiees similar to Krrsantan for years in the comics and video games. Mad Claws are not a new concept, but to many people watching the Book of Boba Fett, it might as well be. This is their first bad guy Wookiee. It's exciting. So what am I expecting from the character in this series? He might be Boba Fett's big bad for the season. The Hutts are in charge, of course, but we're not going to get a big fight sequence between Boba Fett and 2 giant slugs. I think Krrsantan will be like the big, physical adversary Boba has to overcome this season. The massive henchman, like the big guys Indiana Jones always winds up fighting in his movies. I don't think Boba and Krrsantan's history will come into the story directly, but I think there could still be some thematic stuff going on with them. Boba Fett is trying to rise above what he used to be, a bounty hunter. He's trying to grow and evolve. Meanwhile, Black Krrsantan is still in the exact same spot he was nearly 20 years ago, working on Tatooine for the Hutts. What about beyond the Book of Boba Fett? I've already had a lot of people asking me if we could see Black Krrsantan appear in Obi-Wan Kenobi later this year. They also have a history together on Tatooine, like I mentioned. I think it makes sense to ask that question, but I really doubt he'll show up in both series. I think it makes way more thematic sense for Black Krrsantan to appear in the Book of Boba Fett, a story about bounty hunters. Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to be dealing with Inquisitors and Darth Vader and the dark side. That's not to say bounty hunters can't show up in Kenobi or that it's impossible for Krrsantan to appear. I just think that series will have another focus. And if I want to get really pedantic, the comic I mentioned where Krrsantan flees Tatooine for a time takes place a year before Kenobi will, so technically he would not be around for the series anyway. But that's it for today. What do you hope to see from Black Krrsantan in the Book of Boba Fett and beyond? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Book of Boba Fett coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page for even more. We're doing video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they come out. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.